My mom hated me when her gold digger boyfriend left her and wanted me to move out so that she could live happily with her boyfriend. Years later, she called me as her BF had left her, and now she was alone. 28F. Never thought I'd be sharing this story, but here I am. It's a long one, so buckle up. I grew up in a small town called Millbrook with just my mom. My dad left when I was barely a year old, and I never knew him. Mom always said it was just the two of us against the world. We weren't rich, but we got by. Our little two-bedroom house on Maple Street wasn't much, but it was home. Mom worked 2 jobs to make sure I had everything I needed. She'd wake up at 5 a.m. to work the morning shift at the local diner, then rush to her evening job as a receptionist at the community center. I'd often fall asleep to the sound of her typing up the day's reports late into the night. She was my hero. Growing up, I was a quiet kid. I spent most of my time reading or helping Mom around the house. We didn't have much, but we had each other. Every Friday night was our movie night. We'd curl up on our old sagging couch with a bowl of popcorn and watch whatever cheesy rom-com was on TV. Those were the best nights. As I got older, I started to understand the sacrifices Mom made for me. I worked hard in school, determined to make her proud. When I got accepted to the local community college on a partial scholarship, I thought Mom would burst with pride. She hugged me so tight, tears streaming down her face, saying, "We did it, baby. We did it." Things changed when I turned 18. Mom started talking about dating again. She'd never really dated while I was growing up, always saying I was her priority. But now, with me in college, she felt it was time to put herself out there. I was happy for her. She deserved some happiness after all she'd done for me. That's when she met Brad. It was at some mixer for local businesses. Mom had just started a new job as an office manager at a small accounting firm, and Brad was there representing his real estate agency. He was charming, successful, and seemed to make her happy. At first, Brad was always dressed in fancy suits and driving nice cars. He'd take Mom out to expensive restaurants in the city and buy her gifts. I remember the first time he came to our house for dinner. He looked so out of place in our small, cluttered living room, but Mom was beaming. I was a bit wary, but Mom was so happy, I didn't want to rain on her parade. About 6 months into their relationship, I noticed Mom acting differently. She started making comments about how I should move out, get my own place. I was in college working part-time at the campus bookstore and couldn't afford it. When I reminded her of this, she'd get irritated and say I needed to figure it out. One night, I overheard Mom on the phone with Brad. She was talking in a hushed voice, but I could still hear her. "I know, honey. I'm working on it. She'll be out soon, I promise. Then it'll be just us." My stomach dropped. Was she talking about me? Things came to a head last month. I came home from class to find Mom and Brad in the living room. Mom looked furious, and Brad wouldn't even look at me. Mom said, "Brad's moving in next week. You need to be out by then." I was shocked. "What? Mom, I can't afford to move out right now. Can we talk about this?" That's when Brad spoke up. "I didn't know she had a grown daughter. This changes things." Mom turned on him. "What do you mean, changes things?" Brad stood up, straightening his tie. "Look, I'm not ready to be a stepfather. I thought we'd travel, enjoy life, not deal with this." He gestured at me like I was a piece of furniture. Mom's face went pale. She begged him not to leave, saying we could work it out. But Brad was already heading for the door. "It's over, Sandra. Call me when you've sorted out your situation." The door slammed behind him. Mom stood there frozen for what felt like forever. Then she turned to me, her eyes blazing with anger. "This is your fault," she hissed. "If you weren't here, he'd stay. You've ruined everything." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Mom, how can you say that? He's clearly a jerk who was just using you." She wouldn't listen. For the next week, she alternated between crying in her room and lashing out at me. She'd scream that I needed to leave, that I was holding her back from happiness. I tried to reason with her, but it was like talking to a wall. I spent that week in a daze. I couldn't focus on my classes or work. My friends noticed something was wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to explain. How do you tell people your mom chose a guy she'd known for 6 months over her own daughter? I tried to remind her of all we'd been through together. The time I got pneumonia when I was 12, and she stayed out for 3 nights straight to take care of me. Or when she lost her job during the recession, and we lived on ramen noodles for months. But she still made sure I had everything I needed for school. But it was like talking to a stranger. The mom I knew seemed to have disappeared. Last night, it all came to a head. Mom stormed into my room, waving her phone. "Brad texted me. He says he misses me, but he can't be with me while you're still here. You need to leave, now." I tried one last time to get through to her. Mom, please, this isn't right. We're family. We've always been there for each other. Don't throw that away for some guy. She looked at me coldly. You're not family anymore. You're just a burden. Get out. Those words broke something in me. I packed a bag with some clothes and essentials. As I was packing, memories flooded my mind. The stuffed bear Mom got me for my 5th birthday that I still kept on my bed. The photo of us at my high school graduation, both of us grinning ear to ear. The promise she made me that day, that she'd always be there for me no matter what. It all felt like a lie now. Mom watched from the doorway, arms crossed as I packed. As I walked past her, I said, I hope he's worth it, Mom. I really do. I'm writing this from my friend Sarah's couch. She's letting me crash here until I figure things out. I'm still in shock. How could my mom, the woman who raised me, who I thought would always have my back, choose a man over me? The worst part is, I keep remembering all the good times. The way she'd sing off key while making pancakes on Sunday mornings. How she'd leave little encouraging notes in my lunchbox all through school. The pride in her eyes when I got my first A on a difficult math test. Was all of that fake? Or did Brad just change her that much? I don't know what to do next. I can't afford my own place yet. I might have to drop out of college to work full-time. Everything I planned for my future is up in the air now. I was supposed to graduate next year, maybe go on to get my master's degree. Mom and I had talked about road tripping to check out grad schools together. Now, I don't even know if I'll finish my bachelor's. Has anyone else dealt with something like this? How do you move forward when the person who's supposed to love you unconditionally throws you away? Any advice would be appreciated. I feel so lost and alone right now. Update 1. It's been about 6 months since my last post, and a lot has happened. First, I want to thank everyone for their support and advice. It really helped during those first few difficult weeks. After staying with Sarah for a couple of weeks, I managed to find a small studio apartment. It's not much, but it's mine. It's in an old building on the edge of town, with creaky floors and temperamental plumbing, but it's a roof over my head. I had to take on a second job to afford it, which meant cutting back on my class load. It's been tough, but I'm making it work. Some of you asked about my other family members. Truth is, we don't have much extended family. My mom was an only child, and my grandparents passed away years ago. My grandmother died when I was 10, and my grandfather followed a year later. I remember how devastated Mom was. She'd spend hours just staring at old photo albums, tears silently rolling down her cheeks. I'd sit with her, not really understanding, but wanting to comfort her. It's strange to think about now, given how things have turned out. As for my dad's side of the family, they were never in the picture. Mom didn't talk about my dad much, but from the little she did say, I gathered he wasn't a great guy. Once, when I was about 14, I found an old letter from him hidden in a drawer. It was full of empty promises and excuses. I never told Mom I found it, but it explained a lot about why she was so hesitant to date for so long. A few people suggested I try to reason with my mom again. I did try, about a month after I moved out. I went to the house hoping she might have calmed down. I stood on the porch where we used to sit on summer evenings, drinking lemonade and watching the neighborhood kids play. It felt so foreign now. She hadn't calmed down. She yelled at me from behind the closed door, saying I ruined her chance at happiness and that she never wanted to see me again. I left in tears, feeling like I'd lost my mom all over again. Since then, I've gone completely no contact. It hurts, but I realized I needed to focus on myself and my own healing. I've been seeing a counselor through my college's free services, which has been helping me process everything. As for Brad, he never came back. A mutual friend told me he's been seen around town with another woman. I guess he found someone without the baggage of an adult daughter. Part of me wants to feel vindicated, but mostly I just feel sad for my mom. She threw away our relationship for someone who clearly never cared about her. I've had moments of weakness where I've wanted to call her, especially on holidays or when something good happens, and I instinctively want to share it with her. Mother's Day was particularly hard. I found myself staring at my phone, my thumb hovering over her number. But then I remember how she looked at me that last night, like I was nothing to her, and I know I can't put myself through that again. Work and school keep me busy, which is good. I'm waiting tables at a local restaurant in the evenings and working at a coffee shop on weekends. It's exhausting, but it pays the bills. I've made some new friends at my jobs, people who know my story and have been incredibly supportive. They've become a sort of chosen family for me. There have been some unexpected positives, too. I've learned I'm stronger than I ever knew. I'm managing on my own, paying my bills, cooking for myself. Still working on that one. I've had more than a few burned dinners. It's not easy, but I'm doing it. I've also started volunteering at a local animal shelter on my rare days off. There's something therapeutic about caring for these animals who've been abandoned or mistreated. Maybe it's because I can relate, in a way. Plus, playing with puppies is a great stress reliever. I still have days where the pain feels fresh, where I miss the mom I thought I had. Like when I aced a really tough exam and my first instinct was to call her and share the news. Or when I was sick with the flu last month, and all I wanted was her homemade chicken soup and comforting presence. But those days are getting fewer and farther between. I'm learning to build a life for myself, on my own terms. I'm even thinking about changing my major. I was studying business because that's what Mom always said was practical. But now I'm considering switching to social work. Maybe I can help other people who've been through similar situations. Again, thank you all for your support. It means more than you know. To those who shared similar stories, know that you're not alone. We're all just doing our best to navigate this messy thing called life. Update 2. It's been just over 2 years since my original post. I wasn't planning on updating again, but something happened recently that I needed to get off my chest. First, a quick recap of the past year and a half. I graduated college. It took an extra semester, but I did it. Got a decent job in my field and moved to a slightly bigger apartment. Things have been pretty stable, all things considered. I did end up changing my major to social work, and I'm now working at a youth center helping kids from troubled homes. It's challenging work, but incredibly rewarding. Sometimes I see echoes of my own story in these kids, and it makes me even more determined to help them. My new apartment is in a different part of town, far from my childhood home. It's small, but it has a tiny balcony where I've started growing herbs and flowers. There's something satisfying about nurturing these plants, watching them grow day by day. It's become a kind of therapy for me. I've made new friends, too. There's a group of us who get together every week for a potluck dinner. We take turns hosting, and it's become a highlight of my week. It's nice to have people to laugh with, to share the ups and downs of life. They've become the family I choose. Now, on to the recent event. Last week, I got a call from an unknown number. Usually I let those go to voicemail, but something made me answer. It was my mom. Her voice was shaky. She said, "Hi, honey, it's Mom. Can we talk?" I was stunned. After a moment of silence, I managed to ask, "Why now?" She started crying. Between sobs, she told me that Brad had left her for good about 6 months ago. Apparently, he'd been cheating on her with multiple women. She said she tried to win him back, but he told her he never really loved her, that she was just convenient. As she talked, memories flooded back. The sound of her laugh, the smell of her perfume, the way she used to hug me when I was upset. For a moment, it was like no time had passed at all. But then I remembered that night, the coldness in her eyes, and reality came crashing back. Mom went on to say that she's been alone since then. She tried reaching out to old friends, but most of them had drifted away during her relationship with Brad. She said she realized how much she'd pushed people away, especially me. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I know I hurt you terribly. I was selfish and blind. Can you ever forgive me?" I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to hang up. Another part wanted to cry with her. Instead, I just listened as she poured out her regrets and apologies. She told me about how she'd been going to therapy, trying to understand why she acted the way she did. She talked about her own childhood, things she'd never shared before. About how her own mother had always prioritized men over her, and how she'd sworn she'd never do the same to her own child. "But I did," she said, her voice breaking. "I became exactly what I hated." When she finished, I took a deep breath and said, "I hear you, Mom, but I can't just pretend the last 2 years didn't happen. You chose a man over your own daughter. You kicked me out when I needed you most. That's not something I can just forget." She started crying harder. I know, I was wrong. I've regretted it every day. Please, can we try to rebuild our relationship? I miss you so much." I told her I needed time to think. We ended the call with her promising to respect whatever decision I made. Since then, I've been a mess of emotions. Anger, hurt, sadness, and even a bit of hope are all swirling around inside me. Part of me wants to give her another chance. She's still my mom after all. But another part is scared of being hurt again. I keep thinking about all the milestones she's missed. My college graduation, my first real job, my first apartment that wasn't a tiny studio. I've built a life without her, and the thought of letting her back in is terrifying. But then I remember the good times too. The way she'd sing me to sleep when I was little. How she taught me to ride a bike, running alongside me until I found my balance. The pride in her eyes when I won the spelling bee in 5th grade. I've talked it over with my friends and my therapist. They all say the same thing. It's my decision, and there's no right or wrong answer. I'm leaning towards giving her a chance, but with very clear boundaries. Maybe meeting for coffee in a public place, seeing how that goes before deciding on any further contact. But I'm still not sure. The hurt runs deep, and trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild. I keep thinking about how she looked at me that night, how easily she threw me away. Can someone really change that much? I guess I'm writing this update partly to sort out my own thoughts, and partly to ask for advice. Has anyone been in a similar situation? How did you handle it? Is it possible to rebuild a relationship after something like this? Or am I setting myself up for more pain? Whatever I decide, I know it won't be easy. But I also know that I'm stronger now. I've built a life for myself, and I have people who truly care about me. My mom's actions can't take that away. Thank you all again for your support throughout this journey. It's meant more than you know.